All right, good morning and welcome to Yomi, to the millions watching on YouTube, give or take 999,994. It is wonderful to have you all on board today for the final shiur of Masechet Eruvin. Everybody say, "Aww." Oh, I can't wait. So it's only 7.5 years to go before we can give that one another crack. Okay, but truly a massive shakoyach to the stalwarts of the Bushy weekly Daf Yomi crew online, and a even bigger yashikoyach to the stalwarts of the Bushy daily Daf Yomi self-motivated program as well. It's truly a phenomenal accomplishment. It really, really, truly is. I can't even remember how many weeks we've been doing this for now, but today is going to be our last glimpse at the world of Masechet Eruvin. So our learning today is sponsored Le'ilui Nishmas Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs Zichron Levracha. So our learning, as with all of the learning that we do at the moment, really in the shul, our programs are dedicated in honor and in memory of Rav Yaakov Tzvi ben David Aryeh, Zichron Levracha, and a big premature thank you to our sponsors this morning. Boy, they're going to get a shock afterwards when when we smooth out the details. No. But here we go, guys. We're going to take a look first at the final Mishnah of Masechet Eruvin on page 104b. So we're going to get that up on the screen for you over here and over here. And I'll tell you the plan. We're going to have a look at this Mishnah. We're going to have a look at the last chunk of Gemara on 105a, on Kuf Hey Amud Aleph. And then I'm going to put up on the screen the text of the Hadran, which is the formula that we recite upon the completion of a Masechta. Because unfortunately we're not able to meet in the minyan, we won't say the Kaddish. But then we are going to dive straight into Masechet Pesachim, which is exciting, guys. So let's do this. Says the final Mishnah of Masechet Eruvin on Kuf Daled Amud Beis 104b. Sheret shenimtza b'mikdash. So we've been seeing a whole bunch of different things, circumstances that you can find yourself in, where the rules were different depending on whether you were in the Beit HaMikdash or not. There were certain things that that we rule leniently on, because you will not come to violate anything greater, or will not be tempted to do anything which is forbidden on Shabbos or on Yom Tov or whatever it might be. And so, because you would be under greater scrutiny in the Beis HaMikdash, we were lenient in certain areas of halacha than we would have been otherwise. So the Mishnah says, Sheret shenimtza b'mikdash, if an insect, a carcass of a creeping animal, if it was found in the Beis HaMikdash, in which case we've got to be concerned about tumah. So the Mishnah says, Kohen motziu behemyano shelo l'shahos es hatuma divrei Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka. So our first position in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yochanan ben Beroka says that we do not want to delay at all. There is a source of impurity in the Beis HaMikdash, and we need to get rid of it. So a priest should carry it out in his girdle. So even though his girdle will become defiled and contaminated from the tumah, it is more important that we should get rid of this source of tumah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, but Seves Shel Eitz. Rabbi Yehuda says, well, it's okay, it's there. As long as we don't touch it, as long as we leave it where it is, we can give the Kohen a couple of minutes to go and find a pair of wooden tongs. Because if he goes to find a pair of wooden tongs, wood is a material that does not contaminate and does not contract impurity. So give him a minute, let him go and get himself a pair of wooden tongs, and that way he can scoop up, there's the camera, then you can scoop up the insect, and that way nothing else is becoming impure as a result of his actions. Continues the Mishnah, Where should he be removing it on Shabbos? Says the Mishnah, Min ha'heichal u'min ha'ulam u'mubein ha'ulam v'lam mizbeach. Divrei Rabbi Shimon ben Nanas. The first position, Rabbi Shimon ben Nanas says, he should be removing it if it's found in the entrance hall. The heichal, which is already, we're going beyond the big altar outside, and now we're going into the building. So if it's found in the heichal, in the sanctuary, min ha'ulam, the hall, u'mibein ha'ulam, ulam mizbeach, and if it's found between the ulam and the altar, from all of those places, it should be removed. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Rabbi Akiva says, Kol makom shechayavim al sedona kares v'al sheligaso chatas misham motzi enoso. Rabbi Akiva says there are places where, if you went into these particular areas in a state of impurity, you're going to bring upon yourself a punishment of kares, a spiritual excision, if you were doing it on purpose, and if you were doing it inadvertently, you would bring upon yourself a korban chatas. So if you are in any of those places, then you have to remove it from there. So that would include, therefore, the entire area of the temple courtyard, not just the space between the altar and the entrance to the hall, but actually anywhere in that temple courtyard, according to Rabbi Akiva, you would have to remove it from there. Ushar kol hamakomos kofin alav pesachta. And if you find it in any other place in the Beis Hamikdash, so I guess that would include the Ezras Nashim, the areas before that, and the storage rooms and things like that. So if you find it in any of those places, then the Mishnah says you just cover it with a bowl, and that way you're not spreading the contamination to the rest of the Beis Hamikdash. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, Makom she'etiru lacha chachamim mishalcha nesono. Let's try that one again. Makom she'etiru lacha chachamim mishalcha nesonu lach. So Rabbi Shimon says that there's a principle. Wherever the chachamim, the sages, permitted something to you, they granted you only from your own. Shalol hitiru lacha ela mishum shavos. As they permitted to you only activities that are prohibited due to rabbinic decree. What are we trying to say over here? We are trying to say, like it's explained in the Gemara. Oh, that's extremely helpful. Thank you, Rashi. Okay, well, let's see if we can figure that out when we get down there in a couple of moments' time. Because now we are going to scoot through to towards the end here. We are, if you're following inside the book, we are 8 lines down on Kuf Hey Amud Aleph, 105a, our final chunk of Masechet Eruvin. So the Gemara cites a teaching from the rabbis, a baraisa, Tanu Rabbanan, Hakol nichnasin beheichal livnos litakein v'lahotzi es hatuma u'mitzvah b'kohanim. So the rabbis taught us that it is permitted for anyone to go into the sanctuary of the Beis Hamikdash, the building of the Beis Hamikdash, if they are going in there to build, to renovate, to fix, to remove impurity from the inside. However, there is a mitzvah wherever possible. It's always better if it's done by Kohanim. So that's fascinating because we don't necessarily think about the renovations and the upkeep and all these kinds of things. Danielle, could you just go and lift up the blinds, please? Because I can see these lines cutting across my face. Thank you very much. So we don't necessarily think about what it took to keep the Beis Hamikdash in good check. There, oh, look at that spotlight. So that can be done by anybody, but there's a preference, and it's better for it to be done by a kohen. Imein sham kohanim nichnasim levim. If there are no kohanim who are capable of doing these different tasks, then we should give the job and the responsibility to the Levites. Ein sham levim nichnasim Yisraelim. If there were no Leviim, then we should allow Yisraelim, the plebs, to go and do it. Ve'idi tahorin in tamein lo. But in all of these cases, that you still have to be pure. You still have to be in a state of ritual purity to go into these areas. If not, if you are impure, you should not be going in there. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, Rav Kahana Messiah Kahane. Rav Kahana, who himself is a Kohen, was a Kohen, he supports the Kohanim. Tani Rav Kahana, because it's taught by Rav Kahana. Mitoch shene'emar ach el haparoches lo yavo. There's a verse that says in Vayikra chapter 21, verse 23, only he shall not go. It's such an interesting translation. He shall not go in unto the veil, meaning that he should not come up to the parochet, up to the curtain that was inside the heichal. Says the Gemara, Yachol lo yehu kohanim balei mumin nichnasim bein ha'ulam ulam mizbeach la'asos rikui pachim. So the Gemara asks the question. I might have thought that maybe what this is telling me is that the kohanim, who are balei mumin, who have blemishes, that they may not enter between the ulam, between the hall and the altar, in order to la'asos rikui pachim, in order to manufacture beaten plates of gold, meaning to create the decor for the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Talmud Lomar, ach. So the verse teaches us the word ach. That's how it starts. To which the Gemara interprets chilek. It is an expression of exclusion. It is trying to distinguish something. What's it coming to distinguish? It's coming to distinguish as follows. Mitzvah b'tzmimim. The ideal way is that whoever's doing these jobs, whoever's decorating the inside of the heichal, they should be free of any blemish. Ein sham tamimim, nichnasim balei mumim. If there were no tamimim, if there were no priests who were unblemished, then we can accept kohanim who are blemished. Mitzvah b'taharim. It's a mitzvah ideally to have these things done by people who are in a state of ritual purity. Ein sham taharim nichnasim tameim. If there's nobody there that can complete the task in a state of purity, then you should allow people in who are ritually impure. Idi v'idi kohanim in, Yisraelim lo. In both cases, if they are priests, they're kohanim, then they should come in. Yisraelim lo. And if they are not Yisraelim, then they may not enter these places, according to Rav Kahana, and that is why he favors the Kohanim over the non-Kohanim. You know, it's very interesting. I've just had a thought. A lot of things whirling around in my head about this, and especially in light of Rabbi Sachs's passing and his teachings, because you could look at this page and you can start to extract a little nugget of wisdom that applies even now, because we are so tempted to think that the spreading of Jewish values and the spreading of Torah and the morals and the ethics and the values and everything that we learn from Judaism, we can be tempted to think, yes, we need to leave that to the best orators, and we need to leave that to the most scholarly rabbis and the people who are so highly refined and developed in the way that they lead their lives. And perhaps there really is over here a little nugget of applicability that extends in our lives as well, is that when there's a job to be done, when there is a responsibility, when there is something that is a must, you know, we're dealing here with renovations to the Beis HaMikdash. That's a huge deal. That's something that's very important. When there's impurity that is spreading throughout our most sacred and valued building place, so the job has to be done. And if there's nobody around that's in the ideal image that you have in your head, you know, there's no Kohen who is pure and is free of any blemishes. So we might think, well, they're the only people that can do it. Who else could possibly stifle the spread of contamination? Who else could be entitled to keep the glory and the splendor of our Beis HaMikdash going? So it's very easy to sit back and say, like, yes, we will wait for someone of that stature to come along. And yet the Gemara is clearly telling us, when there is something that needs to be done, when there is contamination I'm extending a little bit here and extrapolating, but when there's contamination of our values, when there is tumah spreading throughout the places that are of most value to us, when there are when our Jewish world and our Jewish society and our Jewish education and everything is crumbling around us, We can't just sit back and wait for these once-in-a-generation rabbis to come along and fix it all for us. We have to step up to the plate. Now, I'm not calling anyone here tamei. I'm not calling anyone here bale mumin. We're not blemished, but the point is that we were privileged for many, many decades to have Rabbi Sachs who would push that through and would be that voice. But in the absence of a Rabbi Sachs, we can't just wait for the next one to come along. We all have to step up a gear, as we always have done. We can't just wait for other people to do it for us. We have to step into the fold. That's why we have so many fantastic people to the thousands watching on Zoom and the millions watching on YouTube. We've got so many people joining us already who devote themselves to the community, who step in when they need to step into the ring, who don't just shy away. But to everybody else who's watching and thinks that we just have to wait for everyone else, there's a lovely little message here from the Gemara that we have to step in as well. However insignificant, however incapable, however unsuitable we may think that we are, boom, there's the Gemara to tell us, yes, we can. Yes, we can. All right, let's finish this thing off. The question was asked, if you have somebody who, if your only options are someone who is impure and someone who is blemished, which one should go in to do the work? Rav Chia bar Ashi Amarav. Rav Chia bar Ashi quoting Rav, Tamei nichnas daha ishtari ba'avodas tzibur. The person who is impure should enter the Beis HaMikdash because he otherwise is permitted to serve the community, to perform the tasks of the Beis HaMikdash. Because if the entire community was tamei, then we would have no choice but to let impure Kohanim do the work. So since there's a situation in which Kohanim who are impure could work, therefore in this instance, if that's the only option between that and someone who is blemished, therefore we let the Tamei Kohen go and do the work. Rabbi Elazar says, Balmud nichnas. Daha ishtari ba'achilas kodshim. The person who is blemished can go in, because he at least otherwise, even when everyone is pure, he is permitted to eat sacrificial meats, even in a state of blemish. So he might not be permitted to serve in the Beis HaMikdash, but he at least is able to eat from the sacrificial meats. So that is the dispute between Rav Ashi Amarav and Rabbi Elazar. But the question, yeah, I thought it did. The Gemara leaves the issue unresolved, and perhaps that all ties into my lovely little bit of Hasidic insight. I'm not a Hasid, but I'd like to think that there was some truth to what I was saying. Says the Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon Omer, quoting Rabbi Shimon from our Mishnah just a moment ago, that Makom Shetu L'cha Chachamim Mishal Chal Tanor. So the Gemara says as follows: Rabbi Shimon Heichakai. So Rabbi Shimon had said that the Chachamim were permitting an action as long as they were granting from your own, and the Gemara asks, what are we talking about? Where is this coming from? What is the basis for this principle that Rabbi Shimon is trying to teach? The Gemara answers, Hasan Kai. It's from the same principle that he used over there. Over where? Over there in page 52b. Ditnan, because we saw earlier, Mi shehichshich chutz litzcham, somebody who arrives in the proximity of a town, right? He hasn't yet reached the tchum, but Shabbos is starting, so it's getting dark. Shabbos is starting, and he is still outside of the tchum. He is 2,000 amot or more away from a town. Afilu ama achas lo yikanes. So the first position in that Mishnah had taught us, as we all remember, I'm sure, that if he is outside of the tchum and Shabbos has started, he doesn't have a leg to stand on. Quite literally, he can't even he can't go into the town, even if he was only 1 amma away from the tchum. He can't enter the town. Rabbi Shimon Omer, Rabbi Shimon says, Afilu 15 amma yikanes. He gets an extra chunk of 15 amos. Why does he get the flexibility of going an extra 15 amos? Because when the surveyors were measuring the distance from the perimeter of the city and the 2,000 amot beyond that, they would always leave a little bit of legroom. Hey, good pun. So they would always leave a slightly inaccurate measurement. So let's say they've got this signpost or whatever they're putting up and says like, this is the Tchum. Okay, they wouldn't be so precise to leave it in a place for now that you have no ability to extend further, but they would leave around 15 amot, so that anybody who was erring, making a mistake, there's still a little bit of wiggle room there for people to be able to make it back inside. So if he was 15 amot from that signpost, okay, so that would be the wiggle room, because they haven't measured it precisely. So you get a little bit of extra space there. The surveyors were not so precise. Because with regards to the Tanakama, to the first position, to the first Tama, he said that you may not enter. Va'amale Rabbi Shimon yikanes. And Rabbi Shimon allows that extra wiggle room to be able to go in. And the principle is extending to our Mishnah as well. So he is that the so what are we saying? So Rabbi Shimon is trying to intimate to us that there are areas of permissibility that are allowed to people, because biblically you would be allowed to do them. So even if the rabbis permit something and we think that it's unusual for them to be doing so, what they're doing is within the remit of the Torah, within the remit of what's permitted by the Torah. They just maybe add an extra layer of stringency, which they're able to be flexible with. Continuing the quote from the Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon, who had said to us as well, as they permitted to you only activities that are rabbinically prohibited, but not things that are prohibited by Torah law. Heichakai, what's he talking about? Hasamkai. It's talking about over there. Dika amartana kama koshra. So in separate machlokas that we have seen as well, only quite recently, with regards to fixing an instrument that had broken in the Beis Hamikdash. So the first opinion had said that you can tie it with a knot. V'amar le Rabbi Shimon onva, and Rabbi Shimon had said that you can't tie it, but you can form a bow. You can wrap it back up. This is from Daf Kuf Beis Amud Beis. This is from only a couple of days ago. So he says that the reason why you'd be allowed to form a bow is that it doesn't constitute a biblical prohibition. You're not going to come to a liability of a korban chatas for doing this by accident. So they're working within the confines of what is permitted and what is prohibited by the Torah. Since the Torah does not forbid aniva, wrapping these bows, wrapping this up, looping these things, so therefore Rabbi Shimon was happy to extend the halacha to fixing these instruments. But it was a step too far to allow people to tie knots, because tie knots are fundamentally forbidden on Shabbos. So even though we had said that you could be more lenient in the Beis Hamikdash because people would be under greater scrutiny, nonetheless Rabbi Shimon is saying that the rabbis didn't want to go so far as to permit something which could really have entered into biblical territory. They were only happy to permit something which was biblically permitted but had otherwise been forbidden by the rabbis. But in an instance where you're in the Beis Hamikdash and you're under the greater scrutiny, then we can be more flexible to allow something that is biblically allowed and not have to rule so stringently, even though otherwise the rabbis would forbid it. So, with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to give this a go now. Where are we? Let's get this up on the screen as well. Actually, no, let's just have it like that on YouTube. We are going to have a little crack at this now. All right. Everybody, I'm hoping, can see the text of the Hadran. Give me a thumbs up or a shout. Brilliant. Okay, so can you see over here where it says Shabbat, Shabbat, and Shabbat? When we get to those points, we need to replace those things with the word Eruvin. And if you're reading on this side of the page, then when you get to the word Beitzah, you need to replace it with the word Eruvin. But we are, please God, now going to complete Masechet Eruvin, and we are going to complete it with the formula that we say at the end of every Masechta. So I will actually put it on the screen for all those watching on YouTube, because I'm just going to take us through what we're going to say. We start off with a paragraph here. The first paragraph, we're going to say it 3 times, where we say that we will return to you, Masechet Eruvin, or Masechet Shabbat, or Masechet Beitzah. But the point is that we never feel like we have actually finished a Masechta. You never finish Gemara. Whenever you complete something, we always have this passion and this will to go back to it again. So we start off by praying that we want to come back to study these things again. And then we have a second paragraph over here where we start naming 10 people, all of whom were the sons of Papa. There's a few reasons why this is included in the text of a Siyum. One of the lovely reasons is because the family of Rav Papa would always make a big deal out of a Siyum. And so they would always go all out, lavish, extravagant banquets to mark the occasion, the significant occasion of completing a Masechta. And so we quote the 10 sons, I think, is it 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The 10 sons of Rav Papa for always having that commitment and that desire to beautify the achievements that they have made. We then have a paragraph which is similar to our Birkat HaTorah in the morning, talking about sweetening Torah for ourselves, wanting to pass it on to the next generation. So we have a prayer and a blessing to do with that. We have a prayer of thanksgiving for being in a situation and for being of a mindset and a disposition to want to study Torah and what that means for us. And then we have a final prayer that we say to Hashem, that just like we have been privileged to finish Masechet Eruvin, so too should we be privileged to complete other Masechtas and other portions of Torah. So that's the formula that we are now going to say. Is everybody ready? We'll take it nice and slowly. You can say it in the Hebrew, you can say it in the English, and let's do this together. Hadran alach Maseches Eruvin, v'hadrach alan. Datan alach Maseches Eruvin, v'datach alan. Lo nisnashe minach Maseches Eruvin, v'lo sisnashe minan. Lo ba'alma hadain, v'lo ba'alma de'aseh. 3 times. Hadran alach Maseches Eruvin, v'hadrach alan. Datan alach Maseches Eruvin, v'datach alan. Lo nisnashe minach Maseches Eruvin, v'lo sisnashe minan. Lo ba'alma hadain, v'lo ba'alma de'aseh. Hadran alach Maseches Eruvin, v'hadrach alan. Datan alach Maseches Eruvin, v'datach alan. Lo nisnashe minach Maseches Eruvin, v'lo sisnashe minan. Lo ba'alma hadain, v'lo ba'alma de'aseh. Yehi ratzon milfanecha, Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avoseinu, shetehei sarasacha umanuseinu ba'olam hazeh, usehei imanu la'olam haba. Chanina bar Papa, Rami bar Papa, Nachman bar Papa, Achai bar Papa, Abba Mari bar Papa, Rafram bar Papa, Rachish bar Papa, Surchav bar Papa, Ada bar Papa, Daru bar Papa. Ha'arev na Adonai Eloheinu Es divrei sarasacha b'finu uvevios amcha beis Yisrael. V'nihiyeh anachnu v'tzeet sa'enu v'tzeet sa'ei amcha beis Yisrael. Kulanu yodei shemecha v'lomdei sarasecha lishma. Me'oivai techakmeni mitzvosecha ki le'olam hi li. Yehi libi samim bechukecha leman lo evosh. Le'olam lo eshkach pikudecha ki vam chiisani. Baruch atah Adonai lamdeni chukecha. Amen, Amen, Amen. Selah va'ed. Modim anachnu lefanecha. Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avosenu. Shesamta chelkeinu miyoshvei beis hamidrash. Ve'lo samta chelkeinu miyoshvei koronos. She'anu mashkimim ve'heim mashkimim. Anu mashkimim ledivrei sarah, v'heim mashkimim ledivarim betelim. Anu amelim v'heim amelim. Anu amelim umekablim sachar, v'heim amelim v'einam mekablim sachar. Anu ratzim v'heim ratzim. Anu ratzim l'chayei ha'olam haba, v'heim ratzim Leve'er shachas, shene'emar, va'ata Elohim, toridein, leve'er shachas, anshe damim umirma, lo yechetsu yemehem, va'ani ertach bach. Yehi ratzon, lefanecha, Adonai Elohai, keshem she'azartani, l'sayem maseches, Eruvin, Kain ta'azreini lahafchil masechtos u'sefarim acherim u'lesayamam lilmod u'lelamed lishmor v'la'asos u'lekayem es kol divrei salmud terasecha v'ahava u'zechus kol hatanaim v'amoraim letalmidei chachamim ya'amod li u'lezari Shelo tamush hatara mipi umipi zari v'zera zari ad olam. This is Kayem B. Behis halechacha tanche osach. V'shochbacha tishmor alecha. V'hakitzosa hi sesichecha ki vi yirbu yamecha. V'yosifu lecha shenos chayim. Orech yamim bimina, bismola, osher v'chavod. Adonai oz la'amo yitain, Adonai yevarech, esamo v'shalom. Mazel tov, everybody! Unmute yourselves for a moment. Let's see. Mazel tov. You can do it. Mazel tov, everyone, on finishing Maseches Eruvin. A wonderful achievement. We can hear you, Cedric.
Yes. Well done. Thank you very much.
Well done, everyone. Now, we haven't finished yet, because we've just said a prayer that may it be your will, that just like you help us complete other Masechtas, so you're going to help us begin other Masechtas as well. So what better way to fulfill these very, very words than to start with Masechet Pesachim? So we're going to do that together as well. We'll do just a little bit. We'll start with the Mishnah on 2a. So let me just get Pesachim up on the screen over here. Share screen. Here we go. We'll get it up on StreamYard as well. Here we go, guys. The beginning of Maseches Pesachim. Hello and welcome to Daf Yomi. We are going to start Pesachim 2a. Here we go, guys. So Masechet Pesachim will take us basically chronologically from Bedikas Chametz right the way through to Seder night. So we've got 10 chapters of Pesachim that we're going to get through. But for now, we're going to tackle just this Mishnah here, and then you can give me thumbs up or thumbs down as to whether you want to do any more. Says the Mishnah on Daf Beis Amud Aleph, page 2a. Or la'aba'asa bodkin es hachametz le'or haner. So we're taught that on the or of the 14th, we search for chametz by the light of a candle. Now let me ask everybody here. All right, you can unmute yourselves. Or la'aba'asar, the or of the 14th, when we search for chametz by the light of a candle. Do you think we're doing that in the daytime, or do you think we're doing that in the nighttime?
Nighttime.
David says nighttime. Stephen says nighttime. Nighttime. Well, guys, the whole first daf and into the second daf is going to be various proofs, one way or the other. We'll see some proofs that indicate that it should be done in the daytime, and we'll see some proofs that indicate it should be done in the nighttime. As we all know, the way that we will end up ruling is that it should be done in the nighttime. But it's fascinating that there are so many different places in the in the Torah, where there is such ambiguity that leads people to suggest that it might mean the daytime. Nonetheless, the Mishnah continues. Kol makom she'ein machnisin bo chametz ein sarich bedika. Any place where chametz is guaranteed to have never entered during the year, those areas do not need bedika. Now, this is very applicable halachically, even nowadays, because if you never take chametz up to your bedroom, then you do not need to do a thorough bedika of your bedroom to get ready for Pesach. And this is where the whole world of whether we are spring cleaning or whether we are actually trying to get rid of our chametz in the run-up to Pesach really starts to take hold. We don't have a requirement to spring clean before Pesach, but we do have a requirement to get rid of our chametz. So for anyone who's watching who finds pre-Pesach prep extremely difficult because they think that they have to, turn all of the furniture upside down to be able to clean for Pesach, there is your source in the Mishnah. Any place where chametz could not have got into, you do not need to search, and therefore you do not need to clean before.
I wonder, Rabbi, whether though it's sort of in a sort of twisted way that the idea of spring cleaning may have actually originated from the search for chametz.
I think that is highly likely. I've had similar thoughts in the past. But we can't get confused between the two, because one of them can ruin your Pesach and one of them could make it a whole lot better. Try telling my wife that there. And what were they talking about when they were talking about the need to search for the 2 rows of barrels in the wine cellar? Makom shmachnisin bo chametz. They were talking about when chametz could get into those places. So you might say to yourself, oh, well, chametz never gets down to the cellar, so I don't need to check for it. And yet we're going to see a machloket between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, where they talk about the need to search for 2 rows of your barrels. Well, they are talking about a place where your wine shamash, your wine attendant, your waiter, would go down to the cellar, and he would take his chametz down there with him. And so it's a place like that where you would have to search. But if chametz never goes there, you do not need to search. So now we'll have a look at this machlokes that the Mishnah is quoting. Beis Shammai omrim, Beis Shuros Apanei Kol Hamarte. Beis Shammai say you have to search the first 2 rows across the entire cellar. So if you come in and you can imagine, you've got like barrels after barrels after barrels, and they're all on top of each other. So the ones that are facing you, according to Beis Shammai, as you come in, you have to search the first 2, columns really of barrels that are in front of you. Beis Hillel omrim shtei shuros hachitzonos shehin ha'elyonos. Beis Hillel say you actually have to search the first two top rows of this stack of barrels. That's the machlokas between base Hillel and base Shammai. So we finished the Mishnah. Give me a thumb up if you would like to stop here, or whether you want to go a few lines into the Gemara as well. Thumbs up for stopping here. Thumbs up for a few lines of the Gemara. Okay, let's do a couple of the. Let's do the first couple of lines. Let's do the first proof at least. So my or. What does the word or in the Mishnah mean? Rav Huna Omar. Rav Huna says it means naghei. It means light. The Rav Yehuda Omar lele. And Rav Yehuda it means the nighttime. Kasal kadatach deman da'ama naghei mamash. Uman da'ama lele mamash. So we would start to think now at this point that Rav Huna, who says that the word or means light, that we have to be searching by light. And Rav Yehuda would say that it means lele mamash, nighttime actual. So let's have a look. Challenge number 1. Mesave. We have a challenge. Says the pasuk in Bereshis, Haboker or v'ha'anashim sholcho. So the verse says, as soon as the morning was or, the men were sent away. So the Gemara concludes then, Alma or Yamamahu. So that means that or denotes the day. So the Gemara asks, Mi kasiv ha'or boker. Did the verse say that the light is day? Haboker ha'or boker. Is that what it said? No. Haboker or kasiv. It didn't say that. The verse said haboker or the morning was light, which indicates that Commander Amar Safra Nahar. It was trying to give an illustration almost. It was trying to say that it was a bright day, that the morning was lightened. Rav Yehuda Amarav. And this is like Rav Yehuda quoting Rav. Amarav Yehuda Amarav. La'olam yikanes adam b'chi tov v'yatza b'chi tov. As they said, a person should always enter a city b'chi tov, while it is still light, and he should leave while it is light. Meaning that when you're on a journey, you should arrive in an unfamiliar place while it is still light, and then you should wait until sunrise the following day before continuing on your journey. So this first proof is indicating to us that it's not saying that or means day, but just that in the context of this particular verse, the morning was starting to lighten. So, says the Gemara, challenge number 2. Let's do another one. Meisaveh, uchaor boker yizrach shemesh. As the verse says, and as the light of the morning when the sun rises. Alma or yamamahu. Therefore, or means the day. The implication of this, guys, is that if or meant the day, that we would be searching for chametz only in the daylight. But we don't. We search for it in the nighttime, as we know. Mikasiv or boker. Did the verse say or boker? No. The verse said ukaor boker kasiv. That is like the light of the morning. V'hachika amar, and this is what it's trying to say. Ukaor boker ba'olam hazeh ke'ein zerichas shemesh letzadikim le'olam haba. As the light, as brightly as the morning light of this world shines at its peak, so will the rising of the sun be for the righteous in the world to come. So there is no proof here, therefore, that or means the daytime. So there we go. That's 2 proofs of the Gemara, and you'll have to stay tuned and to check out tomorrow's daf to find out more. As we know, we will get to a point where we will conclude that or means the night time. We're going to see in challenge number 4 that it means nighttime. And then, there's 11 challenges just on this first page alone, and then you go into more on the second day. But that's all we'll leave ourselves time for today, ladies and gentlemen. So mazel tov again to all those completing Maseches Eruvin, and we will return to it one day. So by then, maybe I'll actually understand it. In the meantime, we wish you a wonderful and meaningful